All right. Am I gonna watch the hookup video? Yeah, I think we're gonna watch this hookup video. Okay. Good voice, huh? Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So I've had this video in the queue for a couple days. It's called "Hookup Culture is Bad for the Boys Too," and that's actually very interesting because, like, it's weird because I don't know if I agree with that. Here's the thing: when you look at marriage statistics, anybody that has a higher body count before marriage tends to report a less happy marriage in the long term. At least that's what my understanding is from. I've read through this myself here. And it's interesting because people in the manosphere also always talk about how it's bad for women to have more partners because it makes them have less happy marriages in the long run. However, men show the same statistic. If anything, it's even greater, right? So you see here, and this is like the people reporting a very happy marriage, and this is the number of partners. And so you see as like this is like, oh, they report one partner, 70 something percent of men report a happy marriage after like 10 years, I think it is, while 65% of women report. And as the number of partners goes up, you see that the happiness report level tends to go down. So overall, you can make a pretty strong argument. I find it interesting that manosphere people like to cherry pick the statistic and remove the part where like men shouldn't be sleeping around because they need to advocate for men doing whatever they want, while telling women that they should be, not be doing anything that they want to. So it's an interesting double standard, despite the fact that these statistics objectively disagree with them. Or I think like the age of the people isn't really controlled for. The age, the community that they grow up in, like how much sexual selection that they do have, because in like a city area, you're gonna have higher sexual selection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of stuff here. But either way, I'm interested in this video. I'm interested in seeing what this person has to say. Let's get it going, because overall, it does seem like statistically I'm wrong, but it's good to kind of get the energy out of there. It's good to get your energy out of there, but I will say one problem is if you're sleeping around in like your early 20s, and as it goes on and on, you kind of get used to that type of behavior, and it's difficult to close it up, I imagine. But okay, let's go.
Hello, welcome back to my channel. This
Oh,
video
an
is a
English
little bit
person.
late, but as promised, I am going to today discuss the effects of hookup culture on men. So oftentimes you probably hear people say things like hookup culture only benefits men.
Oh, you know what's one of the things that's bad for hookup culture for men? It's kind of like a weird one. So you go on Tinder. So guys who are confident and like understand how to lose, which is a really big deal, they do pretty well. Like I used to do pretty well. I was not a super handsome guy, but the thing about trying to hook up with girls is you just have to understand that you're going to lose 95% of the time. That's okay. You're on Tinder. You can bang, this rejection doesn't really matter, but you'll get accepted pretty quickly as long as you just have the confidence to roll through and understand some people just aren't into you. And this gives women, though, makes some of them feel a little more confident than maybe is proportionate, because when you're looking to bang, sometimes you're not looking for the best racehorse. You're just kind of looking to get it in, and then all of a sudden some women get their confidence a little too high to a point where they reject some of the guys that maybe are more on their level. I'm not trying to be rude. I could see that potentially as an issue. You know what I mean? Especially since we watched another video about incels, and the statistic was that like I think 40% of people who use dating apps or Tinder using it just for a confidence booster, and those are probably going to be women. So it's like it all kind of comes together,
And that's partially true. So hookup culture does predominantly benefit men, but it only really benefits a small minority of men. In fact, some men can't.
I disagree a little bit, because I feel like some women do like to hook up. Like women like sex, so I don't know if it's not beneficial to women. You know what I mean? I think women enjoy it. The issue comes when like the guy's like, yeah, I might be open to a relationship, but let's kind of fuck around first, and then like they kind of lie to women, and you know what I mean?
Can't even take part in hookup culture even if they wanted to. And we can see that this is true because there's been a rise in male virginity as the years have gone by. 1 in 3 men are either virgins or have not had sex in the last year.
Yeah. That statistic isn't just virginity. We watched this statistic from another video. It was people who haven't actually it's a share of men under 30 who report 0 female sex partners since they turned 18. Which is kind of weird, because like that's not virginity. It's just reporting not any sex partner since they were 18. That's a little bit of a weird statistic. But okay.
Years have gone by. 1 in 3 men are either virgins or have not had sex in the last year. This large number of men who aren't able to find female companionship or female partners is also a big part in why we've seen massive explosions on platforms like OnlyFans, as one of the most popular genres on OnlyFans is known as GFE, which basically stands for the girlfriend experience.
I personally never done that. That is a little bizarre. People pay like a lot of money just for somebody to give them like emotional attention, which is just what you do in a relationship anyway. You know, you do gotta pay women to make them like you anyway. That's how I do with my wife. I'm taking her on like a little weekend vacation. That's that, you know, that punani's expensive, you know. Yeah, my wife's very good to me. I'm just joking around a little bit.
Because what's happening is men are basically paying OnlyFans models.
Papa, I'm a decently good-looking guy who goes out and touches grass, but I have trouble interacting with women. Can you teach me how to get maidens? So here's the first thing. This is one thing I just talk about, is a lot of the places where people historically have gotten like a relationship from have usually been like at work or in like, you know, social interactions like church, things like that, like hobby places, and you kind of get to know somebody. That being said, like now I was mostly like an online dater. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, get like a Tinder or something. I met my wife through Tinder. You know, if I feel like the women have sexual selection, but like men have relationship selection, if that makes sense. So if you get a woman to like you, you to guarantee that you can be in a relationship with her, right? If a woman can start fucking a guy, like if you're a guy and you're sleeping with a woman, you could be in a relationship with her, right? If you're a girl and you want to be in a relationship, sleeping with a guy isn't going to guarantee that at all. It can help if you got some, you know, class A stuff. So you got to build your confidence. I personally, like, I don't know, go on Tinder, go on like OkCupid, go on like Plenty of Fish, talk to girls, like be chill, fail, be good at failing. Confidence is key. Confidence means overcoming failure. People are going to reject you. Who cares? Don't care about it. You know what I mean? That's my best advice I can give you.
To act as a substitute for a
How do you get a woman as a bigger man? There are big women out there, man. It's not that big of a deal. Bro, you know, one thing I will say, sorry, I know I'm pausing this video a lot. We're only like a minute in, but people are asking me like legit questions. I will say that a lot of guys, okay, we talked, I made like a bit of a joke, but just a little bit true about how women have very high standards. Guys have very high, virgin men have very high standards too. I remember when I was a virgin and like, I was like, oh, I don't really want a girl that's like a little overweight. And like, oh, I kind of want a virgin, because part of it's like my own insecurities. Lower your standards to have realistic standards. All right, I was a fat guy who didn't really want to date fat girls at one point when I was much younger. And then the first girl I did, it was a fat girl and I didn't care. It's weird. You know what I mean? And especially since bigger guys have easier time getting girls. It's bigger girls have getting guys, or at least relationships. But anyway, you know, like have a realistic standard. Look at yourself in the mirror and go, maybe I'm not as handsome as I think I am. Right? Both ways. Have realistic expectations. And you know what? Check it out. Go on a date with an ugly girl. First of all, she might not be as ugly as you think. Second of all, like, who cares? Talk to her. Get to know her. Same thing for girls. Go on a date with an ugly guy. Shower, too. Make sure you shower and clean yourself. That's a big fucking deal. Put some nice cologne on. Right? Or don't just shower and Axe body spray. Right? Go out. Even if you go out with somebody you don't end up liking them, it's a good experience to go on a date and to like learn how you should operate on a date. Right? So, you know, get your shit together. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you're right. Your standards should be absolutely narcissistic. For sure. For sure. Just like get a flashlight, put it in front of a mirror, and just start fucking it while you stare at yourself.
Girlfriend. I don't really know what that consists of, like what kind of content that is. Substitute for a girlfriend. Basically paying OnlyFans models to act as a substitute for a girlfriend. I don't really know what that consists of, like what kind of content that is, but yeah, they basically are paying these models to pretend to be their girlfriend. Another byproduct of this is the rise in the manosphere. So this is where you'll find your red pill content and your black pill content. And so I might butcher the explanation.
I don't quite understand what black pill is. I gotta look into that.
Of these two sides, but from my understanding, red pill is when you are focused more on self-improvement, so they kind of try and help men improve their like physique and their game and stuff in order to try and attract women. And then the black pill, from my understanding,
that's very generous, because it's a lot of the foundation is on being like anti-woman. We talk about it a lot. I don't need to go through all the specifics here. You could probably watch any other video I talk about. But I don't quite understand the difference between black pill or red pill. It's mostly like manosphere. There are good aspects of the manosphere, sure, about people like, you know, bettering themselves, but a lot of it is like on the foundation of disrespecting women, unfortunately.
Anyways, it seems as though within the black pill, they believe that appearance is the most important thing within within dating. So they basically put forward the idea that wherever you land on the Chad meter, shall we say, in terms of your appearance is what's going to determine your success in dating. That's my understanding. The red pill's a little bit more optimistic. They think there's still stuff that can be done. Whereas the black pill is kind of like you're born with it or not, kind of. That's the energy I get from the two. Okay. But I could be wrong in my interpretation, but from what I've seen, that's the difference between these two pills or whatever. So how did we get here? How did we get into a situation where there's an increase in incels, there's an increase in lonely men paying OnlyFans models to pretend to be their girlfriend, an increase in men.
I think it's mostly technology, honestly. I think a lot of people aren't going out anymore. They're not interacting with the world. We're seeing fewer and fewer jobs. Labor force participation rate is going down. Okay, if you're like, well, unemployment's really low right now. Unemployment doesn't factor in people who have left the labor force. Okay, I think our labor, let me see. Okay, labor force participation rate. Okay. All right, the labor force participation rate is 62.3% as of September 2022. Okay. Let me see if I can find a historical chart. Oh, yeah, you might have actually seen one. Okay. Right. So, labor force participation rate here this is from 2006. It was up here at 66%. Now it's kind of going down. It's fluctuating, coming back up. This shit's all over the place. You get my point. I believe in the 1990s, it was about 90%. Right, so you're seeing more people. Once you exit the labor force, you're no longer part of unemployment rate, which I'm my understanding. So you have to be very careful. Unemployment is a very misleading statistic. A lot of statistics can be very misleading individually. You're gonna have to like mix them together. With the reason why this is important is one, there's men with less money because there's less jobs available. But number two, people, generally speaking, are going to find, like historically, people find their partner out in the world. Right, this is a really big deal. People go out into the world. I was saying it earlier, at your job, at church, at your hobby, at your this, at your that. People are staying inside more. They're playing more video games. They're doing less to go out into the world. They're touching grass less. There's, you know, they're not really going out and socially interacting anymore. You know, that's a big part of it. And yes, sure, pornography for sure. That's a factor. Because check this out. This is the biggest factor to me is that, like, you know, for one, you know, you don't have to necessarily go out and get a girl to see some nice pair of boobies. But a big part of it is that you're seeing it so young. Back in the day when it was like 50 years ago, you might find your dad's like Hustler or Playboy magazine. And if, you know, you see some boobies, it's a little raunchy, but you can't really find anything else. You have to go through great miles, like steps. When I was growing up, motherfucker, you see a girl with big boobies, all of a sudden you're going down a pipeline of like violent sex. It's insane. It really fucks you up on the dynamic of the way that people are supposed to interact. You know, men see it, they think that they should be interacting that aggressively with women. Then some women see it and they like put, you know, and it's okay to like aggressive sex, but you know, men and women will get the wrong idea about how sex is supposed to operate in a way where they'll have sex in a way where they're uncomfortable just because of it. There's just a lot of going on. There's a ton of shit going on. The internet really has fucked people up. It's not a bad thing. I work on the internet, but we have to have these conversations about this stuff.
Men paying money for courses to manosphere content creators. Well, the answer to how we got
paying courses to women on dates
here is, first of all, the sexual revolution, because the sexual revolution detached reproduction from sex and made sex more so about pleasure and therefore turned it into a leisure activity. Now this, accompanied with modern inventions such as contraception, helped to destigmatize casual sex. So the sexual revolution, along with contraception, created the perfect foundations for hookup culture.
I don't think even the majority of I don't know. I feel like technology is a lot more. I personally don't think it's as big of an issue that people are able to have more access to sex. I think the bigger issue is the lack of access or easier access to emotional connection, which you could argue this could be part of the problem. I still think that that technology has been like a really big issue.
And what caused hookup culture to explode was dating apps. The reason why hookup culture is so prevalent today is because of dating apps. Right now, men are in control of the mating strategy. And I know that there's going to be a lot of men watching this video who are going to say that's not true, this is all because of women, etc., etc. As it stands right now, that small minority of men that are benefiting from hookup culture are the ones who are setting the terms for today's mating strategy. I'll explain to you why men are the ones who are causing hookup culture, but women are enabling it. So there were some studies done on campuses, and what they were comparing was to see the differences between female mating strategy and male mating strategy. So what they found on these campuses was that whichever sex was the minority was the one who got to dictate the mating strategy, because they were the minority and therefore the highest in demand. What they observed on all of these campuses was that if the women were the ones who were the minority, these campuses had higher rates of monogamy, because women's natural dating strategy is to be monogamous. But on the campuses where men were the minority, these campuses had higher rates of hookup culture, because men's natural dating strategy is polygamy, which is when...
Well, this doesn't really make too much sense to me, because women are the minority on dating apps, and yet you just said that people are just using dating apps for sex. So this doesn't actually make sense. Okay,
and a man has multiple women at once. So the reason why we have higher rates of hookup culture in our regular day-to-day society is because our dating nowadays is predominantly done through dating apps. And the issue with that...
Most dating apps are male-dominated, and didn't she just say that when it's male-dominated, like women are the minority, they have more control over the sexual pool?
Is that there's only a small minority of men that women actually want within these dating apps. Because dating app data shows that women only swipe right... I can't remember which way is the good way and which way is the bad way, but whichever one's the good way, women only swipe that way 15% of the time. So what's happening is, because there's only a small minority of men that women want, that means that the men, because they're the minority, they've got to set the terms.
This is, no.
So what we're seeing...
No. This is bad. Okay, so listen. I hope that you can link your statistics so I can look at it. In the first instance, this is what's said, and it makes sense. So, in the first instance, they apparently evaluated like high schools, or excuse me, college campuses, and they found when there's more women, right? I'm hearing this correct, yeah? When there's more women, or excuse me, when there's more women, then they're the ones that get more selection, and when there's more men, that the men get the selection. Oh, excuse me. Let me restart this. They found on campuses when there's less women, they have a higher rate of controlling the terms of engagement. And when there's fewer men on campuses, they have the control, right? So men get the control when there's fewer men, women get the control when there's fewer women. Okay, now what you're doing is you're taking the statistic of Tinder. Let's say Tinder for an example. There are exponentially more men on Tinder, and there are obviously fewer women. So by the rules that you've set up, women have control. The problem here is that now you're deciding to add an additional factor that wasn't represented here of desirable men. So if now you're saying, well, it's only the desirable men, and since there are fewer desirable men than there are women, men get control. Okay, so what now you're telling me is that every single person that went to all these campuses were all desirable men to these women. That is just not... that just doesn't add up, right? That just doesn't add up. At all. I'm with you with like some women only want desirable men for sure, but this statistic doesn't strengthen your argument in any capacity at all. I would argue that like I just doesn't add up. It doesn't really make sense. If anything, it makes more sense to say that like the really attractive men are able to fuck girls usually that are like less attractive than them at the chance that that girl will date them, but then women won't really engage with the other guys because their confidence is too boosted through the other guys maybe. But so far this doesn't really make sense. Yeah, let's continue.
Happening on these apps is what we were seeing happening on those campus studies. And in the same way that on those campus studies, we saw that if you have a small minority of men that most of the women are trying to pursue, the men get to set the terms and they will have hookup culture.
Why are all the women in your scenario also desirable? Like when you do this, like it just doesn't make sense. Because like you're saying all the men are, only a small amount of the men are desirable, but all the women are desirable. Your argument doesn't make any sense here. Yeah. Women, I think that maybe it's that women usually go on that app to fuck because they're looking to hook up too, because women also want to hook up. Oh, baby, just put it on the thing. My wife's studying for her tests. Give me her phone. The argument's just like kind of all over the place. It's not adding up. Where the simple thing is that, like, I mean, I don't know. I'm like fucking flabbergasted. It doesn't feel as explored. Yeah. It doesn't feel very explored. If anything, you could just say that there are less women on the app, so the more desirable men are able to get with the women on the app, and then that leaves the more desirable men or the less desirable men out in the field, not able to find women. And since they're socially awkward and don't go outside, especially in a society that is more reclusive because of technology, they're not going out and having social interaction. That makes more sense. Sorry, yeah, I should stop mansplaining it.
Because a male's natural dating strategy is polygamy. I hope that made sense, because I feel like that was a bit complicated. But that is basically the...
I don't know that. I don't think that's true. I don't think that a male's natural dating strategy is polygamy. Men are more likely to fuck around more. I don't think that... I don't know if... I would need to see something on that. I know men tend to have less attached emotional sex. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily polygamous. Okay,
the reason why hookup culture is so prevalent today. And women have enabled it because women have decided to comply with this standard as opposed to rejecting it. And the reason why women are complying with it is because we were raised under the sexual revolution, which has taught us that sex is nothing more than a leisure activity and casual sex is empowering and freeing, even though most women don't actually truly find it to be that way because
that just don't engage in it. I'm just like, not for nothing, this is one of those like stereotypes that's always prevailed, that like women don't like sex. Women like sex as much, if not more, than men. They just, some of them need more emotional connection. Then we wouldn't have so many bitter women saying that men are trash. Which brings me to my next... That's just, oh, come on, bro.
Because if it was, then most women don't actually truly find it to be that way, because if it was, then we wouldn't have so many bitter women saying that men are trash.
Women say men are trash has nothing to really do with hookup culture. It's more that like those women are wronged by a man, and then they say men are trash. I'm not even saying that it's the correct behavior to have. I'm just saying, like, it's nothing to do with hooking up. I mean, the women, in my experience, that I've heard say men are trash, usually because the men won't listen to them, or they'll just be fuckboys and maybe they'll promise a relationship, or they'll get raped. You know, not to be inflammatory, I just feel like this is, what is this a term? This is very reductive. It doesn't, you can't blame every problem on hookup culture, because now we're just pushing a narrative that women never wanted to be freed, or they you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, well, women wanted hookup culture, but now we didn't get it. You know, we didn't get it. Or now that we got it, it actually isn't that good. We should go back. It's like, no, I think women generally like to be more free, and women don't want to be shamed for having more sexual partners. Okay. All right. I'm a little disappointed so far, but maybe there's more.
Which brings me to my next point. Because most women are trying to pursue the same small minority of men, and these men are exploring and enjoying themselves by having multiple women at once, they're not really looking to settle down with any of these women, because why would they when they've got all the options in the world? And so what...
Alright, so like right now she's talking about fuckboys that go around and talk to multiple women. This true. Like when I was fucking around with like dating apps, I talked to like 2 or 3 women at a time. So sure, and if anything, those women are putting their attentions on, this is the bigger problem. Women think that they could change men. They can. My wife changed me. But like a lot of times, like a woman will date a guy and then they're like, I know he's like a, because women like the asshole. Women like a confident guy who can get more women. They don't care that he gets more women. They care that he's more confident. And because he's more confident, he's able to get more women, yada, 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 yada. And those women will stick around with that guy, even though he's a scumbag sometimes, just so that they can try to be with him in a relationship. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And so like, yeah, sure. And then that guy is usually not super honest about how many girls he's dating, so that they think that they're the only one. They feel good about themselves and they're willing to wait, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like this is like a little simple.
What's to happen is they'll mess around with these girls and just have casual sex with them, but never commit to them. And these women will eventually want more from them, because as much as the feminists have told us that we can have casual sex just like men can and it's nothing to us, the reality is we are biologically different.
Okay, stop with the anti-feminist like nonsense. Like, women are just like, feminism fundamentally, and some of it goes a little crazy nowadays, but it's just about men and women having equal opportunity, even though men and women are very different. But if a woman who likes casual sex wants to engage in it, she can without being shamed, right? Just like if a man wants to be a stay-at-home dad, he could do that as well without being shamed. That's kind of like the whole point here. Most women aren't going around being like, I love casual this, that, the other. Like, some women do. But like, what feminism was just about, like, not being under an oppressive power dynamic for the most part, where a man went to work and then he came home and he had every single decision and like all autonomy over his wife, where the wife didn't have any real decisions. So Why the shot at feminism? And you're proposing a boogeyman argument. Like, feminists aren't running around, like actual feminists, not like fucking morons. Women aren't running around being like, women love things just as less as men. Every woman I've ever talked to knows men and women are different. They just want to be treated with respect and equally. So, okay.
The reason why women tend to develop feelings first during these friends with benefits situations is because when women sleep with men, we release a hormone called oxytocin. And this oxytocin is known as a bonding hormone. It causes us to form attachments.
Okay, so the men would... Okay, cool.
And bonds with the person that...
I just know that women tend to be a little more like emotionally bonded than men. So sure. I just don't know if this is accurate because like nothing that they're saying tends to be super accurate, but okay.
We're sleeping with. And so if you have a friends with benefits situation with a guy, you're releasing this hormone when you sleep together. And so you are developing and bonds with, and this oxytocin is known as a bonding hormone. It causes us to form attachments and bonds with the person that we're sleeping with. And so if you have a friends with benefits
I guarantee men also release this as well. Oxytocin, the love hormone. Oxytocin can help us bond with loved ones and can be released through touch, music, and exercise. Oxytocin is a hormone that's produced in the hypothalamus and released in the bloodstream by... Fuck off, sorry. There just keeps like a pop-up piece on my pituitary gland. Its main function is to facilitate childbirth. Okay. Its main function is to facilitate childbirth, which is one of the reasons why it's called the love drug or love hormone. Oxytocin both stimulates the muscles and uterus to contract. Okay, so is this a woman-only thing? So exercise apparently can produce more. Okay, so let's see. Yep, women typically have higher oxytocin levels than men, but men do produce it. Okay. So that makes sense. So that might actually be the reason. I just had to verify it. You both okay, yep, but women typically have higher oxytocin. So that makes more sense as to why women would be more bonding if they have it. Okay. I had to verify that because some of the things that she was saying was a little out of control. That might be the reason why. I had to make sure.
Situation with a guy, you're releasing this hormone when you sleep together, and so you are developing an attachment to them, and that's
it's a woman and man thing. It's just women tend to produce it more because it's like more tied, I guess, to childbirth and whatnot. So all the bullshit.
The reason why women typically tend to be the ones who develop feelings first during these situationships, and this is usually why a lot of these situationships end, is because the woman wants more but the guy doesn't, because men don't release oxytocin.
Yes, they do. It's just objectively incorrect. I just verified that.
When they're sleeping with you. Like, men have oxytocin too, but they don't release it in the same way that women do. So this is why it's a lot easier for guys to have casual sex and to sleep with loads of people and never develop.
While many people consider oxytocin to be a female hormone, it is reported that in men, the plasma oxytocin level increases markedly after ejaculation. So you're just incorrect here, but... All right, fine.
Feelings or get attached, or
it's just probably not at the same amount for sure, but okay,
anything like that. Whereas it's not the same for women because our biology is not the same. Regardless, women still engage in this anyway because most of them don't actually know this information, and this has polluted the dating pool, because what will typically happen is a woman will get with one of these top 15% guys who has no intention of settling down yet because he's in his prime, and then she'll develop feelings for him, she'll want a relationship with him, he's not really interested in doing that, so then they go apart. And then the problem is, if she experiences this multiple times, she will eventually develop resentment and bitterness towards men because she thinks that all men are the same and that all men are trash. And then she will go back out into the world with this new traumatized outlook. And so this is a problem for the other, say, 85% of guys, because they all kind of get lumped in together into this whole men are trash thing, when really it's the men that women are dealing with that are trash, because most women are pursuing the same small minority of men.
I'm starting to come back on a little more. All right.
And they're all being screwed over by that same small minority of men. So the reason why most women think men are trash is because they're all sleeping with the same guys. So far I do feel like I've only spoken about the negative effects of the 85% of men. And to recap what those are, it's that they have higher rates of loneliness because they are invisible to most women, because most women are concentrating all of their attention to that top 15% of men. The second consequence of that is that these men are becoming quite bitter and resentful of women because of the current dating scene. I get the feeling of being resentful towards people who've made you feel worthless. I get that. However, I think it makes more sense to be angry at the culture as opposed to angry at the individuals who've been raised by said culture. Do you know what I mean? For the men who get to participate in hookup culture because you are one of the studs, your time is also limited. It's all fun and games when you're young, but if you are one of the men who are considered very attractive and you are very popular with the ladies, you have a certain time frame to jump out of that hookup culture lifestyle. Otherwise, you too will have the same negative consequences that women have for taking part in it. So in my last video, I shared a video of a woman who didn't prioritize settling down when she was younger, and she was discussing the struggles of being single and unmarried at 46. And today I'm also going to share a story of a man and his experience in a similar situation. So someone posted on Quora.
You're gonna be Andrew Tate. He's like 35 and still hasn't been able to settle down. You know, and that's what happens when you go through like I feel like your 20s, your 20s to your 30s, like your whole 20s to like your early 30s probably. That's when you're supposed to kind of be like learning to I don't know. For me personally, my dating strategy has always just been to go around. I would get into like short-term relationships with multiple women usually, and then when I got kind of bored of them, I'd move on. And then you just wait for the one woman who wants to change you, and then boom, bada bing, bada boom, you're all set. That's my strategy. That's what happened to me. You know. In the same way though that like women, she's arguing, are made to feel like shit by some men, which is true, I think. Those incel-y kind of guys are doing the same level of resentment. You know, you try to overcome that. You know, like I said, a lot of the it's like take a shower and go outside. You know what I mean? Like be presentable. Try to develop social skills. Talk to women. Go on dates. Do your best. You know, be okay with failure. It's a big one too. Shoot your shot. Shoot your shot. You know, get a job. You might meet some people doing their job. You know, learn to interact in general. Just normal interaction. When you learn to normally interact with people, try to be aware of the way that you make people feel around you. Try to make them feel comfortable, but versus not being too much of a pushover. You know what I mean? These are some things that you really have to try to do in these situations to develop the social skills. And don't go to online forums to double down on the way you already feel, because that's dumb. Don't do that.
Is it hard to live as a bachelor your whole life? And so this was the top reply, and it was really popular. It got 1.1 million views and 21,000 likes. And so this is what they said. Yes, it sucks, and it sucks more as you get older. Speaking as a single 54-year-old man who has never been married, I can tell you that being alone as you get older is a scary and unpleasant
I will say one thing. I don't know if I'd listen to Quora. I know what that website is. It's just like a random form. But
proposition. As you get older, you become more aware and sure of your values and what you want. If you are not careful, you become inflexible and unable to negotiate those values. In the meantime, I see around...
Maybe. I understand that. Like, as you get older, you get more stubborn and you're less willing to compromise some of the way that... Maybe. Because I would argue against that a little bit, whereas like you get older, you have a better understanding of what boundaries you're willing to set, but you also are mature enough to understand where you could potentially change those boundaries for somebody else, as long as they're offering something that would make it worth it. But that person's also 54. What the fuck do I know? I'm 32.
Around me, people my age who not only have experienced the trials, pain, and joy of child rearing, but are becoming grandparents. For a long time, while they were changing diapers and coaching Little League, I was practicing for triathlons, traveling the world, doing whatever activity struck my fancy, and driving
Fucking
expensive
bitches.
cars. But they were the winners in the long run. Yes, some, perhaps many of them
Sounds like a woman wrote this. You know what I mean? Trying to make men look bad.
divorced, but they still have their families and children. They experienced the joys of transferring their knowledge and love to another generation of themselves, and they formed intimate bonds with someone special that exceeded mere friendship. I don't regret was pale in comparison to sharing exciting romantic rendezvous, but I think all those things pale in comparison to sharing consistent, cohesive moments with someone you build a future with and plan to grow old with. In addition, the silence of being alone is deafening. You can fill your hours with activities, reading, volunteering, and more, but coming home to an empty house and wondering who will find you if you die alone in the middle of the night, and who will even
probably the police
care, is one of the most pathetic fears of an aging bachelor's life. I still live in hope that somewhere out there is the love of my life, waiting to be discovered somehow.
Yeah, maybe she just wasn't born yet. I know it's going.
But it's with increasing fear and doubt that this hope is threatened. So those are the confessions.
If that's real, man, sad stuff from that guy. Hey, it's just a warning, man. Try to develop a more emotional bonds. If you're gonna go around fuck around with a bunch of girls, make sure you're actually considering dating them in a long term capacity. But it doesn't have to work out.
And as someone who chose the life of being a bachelor, it kind of reminded me a bit of something that Joe Rogan.
Whoa. I didn't stop streaming to call you stupid. I stopped streaming because you were being rude, and then I called you stupid in response. Okay. Stupid.
Said, if I find the clip, I'll put it in the video.
There's psychological needs that are just as valuable and important as physical needs. Like, we know we have needs for nutrients, we know we have needs for water.
True.
We have needs psychological for all sorts of different things. Our communities are incredibly important. Love is incredibly important. Family is incredibly important.
True. I agree.
You know, I know some people that are older men that have been bachelors their whole lives, and they're childless, and now they're, you know, they don't have a deep connection with anybody, and they get to this very weird, strange place where they're like, is this it? Now I'm 70 years old, and I've never really had children, and I don't know what to do, and this is my life now. And it's they've all their friends have had families now, and their families, a lot of times the kids are grown up, and it becomes very, very strange.
The ultimate final destination of hookup culture, for those who aren't able to get out of it quick enough, is loneliness. In that time that you're spending having casual, meaningless hookups or casual, meaningless situationships, that is time that you are taking away from finding someone you can actually have a meaningful relationship with and potentially have a family with, if that's something that you want for yourself. The issue is that there are people who do want that, who would like to have that, but they don't prioritize it, and they kind of leave it too late. But the problem is, are your options still going to be as vast as they are when you are at your prime? That's something to consider, because the worst thing that seems to keep happening to people is that they end up dying alone by default. But that's really all there is to say on that. I wanted to just talk about the negative effects on hookup culture on men too, because I don't think that the negative effects on hookup culture are limited to women. And I did think it'd also be interesting just to understand how hookup culture became so prevalent and so prominent within our society. And I do think that dating apps have played a massive role in getting us to where we are.
True, I agree with that.
Of course, assisted with feminism and the sexual revolution. So
see, this is where, like, here's the problem. This video is pretty solid overall about how, like, about how hookup culture has a negative impact on men, because I agree with that. But a lot of it just seems to be like, oh, it's all feminism's fault. That's the problem that I have with it. It's not blaming the shitty men. It's mentioning the shitty men, but not putting a significant amount of blame on them. It's more about how feminism is the problem. It's not the men in feminism, right? So when it comes to the men acting inappropriately, well, that's just the society they were conditioned by. But when it comes to feminism, well, despite the fact that feminism comes from a society people were conditioned where women were unfavored in the power dynamic, it's a bad thing somehow. Like, it seems like there's this video takes unnecessary shots at women, where, like, the issue I don't think is feminism. I think a lot of it is like technology and like fuckboys and like shit like that. You know what I mean? Overall message is solid. I just don't know why we have to date, but I don't know why we have to, like, blame everything on feminism.
So yeah, dismantling hookup culture completely would be very complicated, because you'd have to completely reshape culture. You'd have to completely reshape society. You'd have to make it more common for people to meet in real life again, as opposed to dating apps. You'd also have to have all the women come to an agreement that they're no longer going to sleep with men they're not in a relationship with, and I don't know how realistic that is. So,
and again, like, the policing is like more about women. Women have to come to the point and realize that they need to stop suing men. You know, okay, what about men? Shouldn't be fucking around. Here's my thing. Both men and women, here's my advice. Do whatever you want. Fuck around. But try not to engage in casual sex. I personally, or excuse me, don't engage in hookup culture. For me, I never actually really hooked up with any girls. I would date a girl, and if I liked them, I would sleep with them. I just wouldn't get into a relationship with them. I would just kind of be like chilling with them. It would take me about 3 or 4 months before I would actually, like, get into a relationship with a girl. After, like, I fully felt like I knew them in a better way. So do that shit. Fuck around, have fun, but don't really commit for a couple months. Not that big of a deal. Apparently your vagina isn't going to stay permanently stretched, so, you know, you don't even have to worry about having too much sex. Something we learned here today in this video. You know what I mean? So just do your thing and find the one that you love, I guess. Easier for men since we don't get attached as much, but that's what I'm getting out of this. Just make sure that for all guys, even if you're just trying to, you know, bust a nut, you know, keep in mind the idea of being in like a relationship with somebody. You know, keep trying, like in your young days, keep looking. Even if you're hooking up more, keep looking for a relationship, kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have no idea whether or not hookup culture can.
And be honest too. That's a big thing. If you're a guy, and like I would always tell women, I'm not really looking for anything serious. All fucking jokes aside from before, I would be like, I'm not really looking for anything too serious. I'm just kind of looking to, like, you know, mess around and like go like date, like casually date. And when, a lot of women were okay with that. Some of them weren't. But when you tell a woman, you're like, yeah, I might date you, and then you just fuck around with them, it's like shitty. You know what I mean?
And be dismantled or not, because like I said, all of the propaganda around the sexual revolution has gotten a lot of people thinking that casual sex is empowering. So you'd have to be completely going against what people have been learning since they were basically kids.
I think the empowering part is that women would be able to have sexual freedom, but and when we were kids, my mom never told me. I don't know if people's moms are telling you that you should. I don't know. I don't think anybody's really conditioning their kids to think it's amazing, but I don't know. Whatever.
I don't know how optimistic I am about people going back to more meaningful, deeper connections with each other. I would like it, you know. I love love, and I think that everyone should have the opportunity to have a deeper, meaningful relationship with someone, because I see all the cute old couples holding hands, and it's just like, I don't know if my generation's going to have many of that.
I do have a real question, and this isn't meant to be like antagonistic. Does this woman actually is this woman in a relationship? Because I noticed a lot of people who talk about like this kind of stuff never really seem to be in like long-term relationships. I could just be wrong. I'm not trying to be an asshole, but like notice the manosphere guys, like, yeah, I know everything about women. None of them are dating anybody. Like this woman, I don't know what she's doing. You know what I mean? Like it seems to be people that don't understand how difficult it can be to be in a long-term relationship, trying to give advice about being in a relationship. It's kind of weird.
Quite depressing, honestly. But yeah, this is the video on the effects of hookup culture on men. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting. If you enjoyed this video, then do like and subscribe.
I'll like it.
If you'd like to catch me on other socials, you can find.
It was interesting. It was stimulating. It was something to talk about. I mean, I guess I was talking about it to myself and my followers, but it wasn't too bad. Some of the stuff I disagree with, obviously, but overall, it was an interesting, engaging topic. Everyone, thank you so much for watching, and a special shout out to all my Patreon patrons, my YouTube members, and my Twitch subs. If you'd like to learn how you can contribute even more than you already are by simply watching the video, you can check the links down below, which will unlock a special feature depending on the platform that you subscribe to, such as Patreon here, that will get your name right here on this wall. Thank you so much, guys, again for watching, and have a good one.